Here we are on Tuesday. Hello, I'm Mike Russell from musicradiocreative.com. Hope you're feeling good today.
Mike Russell is controlling transmission.
Oh, that's good to know, isn't it? Right, we're going on in 3 minutes and 12 seconds with the live stream. Welcome, welcome, one and all. It's wonderful to have you here. And see Rovigo 55's in there. Had an eagle eye and spotted the timing might have been slightly off, but it's thankfully been corrected now. David Silk is here. Haha, fantastic. Barbara's in as well, otherwise known as Nella Arabrab. Gameplay Magic over in Southampton. The Gaming Unlimited joining us today as well in the live chat on YouTube Live right now. Getting ready to go live. Do invite your podcasting friends and buddies and pals and get them to join us today because we've got some podcast editing hacks, including none less than the JKL hack, thanks to Mr. David Silk, who's been teaching me all about shuttling with JKL. We might start off with JKL. Not JK Rowling, JKL. So that's coming up. We'll look at a bit of noise reduction, parametric EQ, compression, loudness, what it is and why we need it, hard limiting, taking breaths out, maybe even a touch of mastering as well on your audio. Hey to Nerland, thanks for joining us. Davis, Engler as well. Big surprised face in there. Stevens, nice to have you. You're there as well. Mr. Mega Radio UK, hello to you. Still got time to invite your friends in. Go and invite them to watch this live stream with you and enjoy it with you. Do I make digit transitions? Davis, no I don't. But if you're interested in the template I'm using for this countdown you see on your screen right now, head over to community.musicradiocreative.com, do a search there for countdown, and you'll see exactly how I put this one together, which is the pre-live countdown before we do this live stream across YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Twitch, Periscope, and other platforms, such as VK in Russia, Picato, Ustream, and so much more. 1 minute to go.
Testing the left speaker. Left. Testing the right speaker. Right. Testing phaser. All frequency sweep. Now. Stand by
for Music Radio Creative Live with Mike Russell.
MRC Live. Music Radio Creative Live.
With Mike Russell.
Starting in 30 seconds.
I don't know about you, but this music really gets me in the mood. You should see me doing the dance before the show begins. Okay, so welcome along to the show. It is an audio production hour and it starts now, especially for podcasters today. So invite your podcasting friends.
Audio production and more. This is Mike Russell on musicradiocreative.com.
Your audio production hour starts now. musicradiocreative.com.
Yeah, that's right. So let's get all the podcasters in here today and let's see if we can't go over strategy together in this wonderful session. I'm really excited to cover a lot of stuff, including, you might see Mr. David Silk is in moderating the YouTube live chat. So we've got David Silk in. He's the one and only moderator at the moment, along with Nightbot, of course, always there, AI. taking over the world. And David recently messaged me and informed me of the JKL shuttle keys. So I wanted to start off by showing you those in Adobe Audition. But I'm also going to go over things like noise reduction, EQing, compression, making your podcast sound good so people can hear it no matter whether they're driving the car or working out or cleaning the dishes even. That kind of stuff. Also, we'll go over some stuff that you should be applying to your podcast if you're not doing it already, like the loudness standards, best file formats to encode in, what files should you mix in, and then what files should you finally mix down into, that kind of stuff. And I'm going to try and squeeze that, compress it, that's a good pun there, isn't it, into a whole hour. So I'm really excited to be with you right now. Oh, and why not? Why not have the full jingle? Let's have another jingle and do some shout-outs. So Paige Williams is there. Yay! Yomalakatuka Kwapakapo. I hope I said your name correctly. You're there. Davis Engler, Leonardo Favorato, David Lewis, hello to you. Ira Aram, The Gaming Unlimited, Brent Carlson, Mohammed as well. Welcome along to the show. You're very welcome here right now.
Your audio production hour starts now. MusicRadioCreative.com.
Yeah, I know. We've done that one already, but why not spin it again? So as you can see, we work with a lot of podcasters at Music Radio Creative. Some of the world-famous podcasters, you may say, are big and small. We work with both, and we're very excited to work on lots of podcast intros and podcast production here at Music Radio Creative. If you think about getting some audio for your podcast, by the way, you can use the exclusive coupon MRC Live when you check out at musicradiocreative.com. Get you 10% off. Right, let's have a look here at this podcast I recorded earlier. It's just something to give you a bit of an example. And I thought we'd start with shuttling and noise reduction. Shuttling is something you can do in most audio editors, but particularly with Adobe Audition, it's fairly easy to do it. And I thought I'd show you on a keyboard. If you have a podcast here loaded, ready to go, say this is your podcast in front of you. Let's switch off preview. There's the waveform, okay? You can shuttle through, and thanks to David Silk for this tip, by using J, K, and L. Just think of J.K. Rowling and then remember J.K.L. like this. So L. Hey, it's Mike here and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. And then J. You're obviously going crazy reverse. That can be fun. David already suggested that I should listen to some Beatles and ELO tracks in that fashion. So J.K.L. So L is to go forward like this. Hey, it's Mike here and welcome to J reverse. Forward. Hey, it's Mike here. It's Mike here. And K to stop again. So J, K, L, really, really easy. And I believe if you go L, L, yeah. So if you double tap J or L on the keyboard when you're playing back a podcast, you can go in double speed, triple speed, quadruple speed, even maybe even 16 or 18 speed. I don't know. But so a double tap on the L will play me like a chipmunk like this. K. And obviously my playhead at the moment is going back to its original position. Here's another shortcut for you to throw out there at the start of this podcast editing hack show. If you hit Shift X, it will change the default behavior of the cursor on the screen. Just hit Shift X. And now look what happens if I go L. Hey, it's Mike here and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. And K. See, then my playhead will stop where I hit K. And that's probably the desired effect for when you're shuttling through audio. So it's like I'm double tapping L to speed through and find the bit I want to edit.
The only issue with this particular podcast is we're rendering constantly whenever we're recording the show.
There, I want to edit there. That breath right there. That breath. And you can kind of shuttle back and forward over that breath. So say, yeah, I want to edit that breath. Let me edit that breath. Or you can have loads of fun. And seriously, you can just sit there all day pushing J, K, and L. I'm just going to hit Shift X to return my playhead, make it return back to the start because that's the way I like it. But yeah, just have some fun. So shortcut keys to write down. Mr. David Silk, and I'm sure others in the chat right now will make you aware of these keys. J, K, L for shuttling through audio. It's particularly handy when you have like a 30-minute or hour-long podcast that you want to rifle through really quickly. You'll find if you actually play back, if you double tap L, it's quite understandable playing the audio at 2 speed.
Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast.
Yep, you can tell exactly what I'm saying. I do sound like a chipmunk, so as well as reducing the time, it's also pitching up, which is fine for editing purposes, and Shift and X to change the behavior of this thing here, the playhead. Another thing worth noting is you can scrub. Scrubbing is good when you want to get, particularly when you want to get precise. Say if you want to make a little cut and you want to find the start of a word. You see there? You can see, and the best thing is this level bar here in Audition will move in parallel and show you exactly what's happening in real time as you're scrubbing. So there's no audio there, but that's where my audio starts. So I can go there and I can kind of draw back and make a cut if I want to whatever region. Say I want to cut out that breath or whatever. Delete, gone. No more breath, all gone, show. So you'll always see breath gone, or Command Z, undo, easy undo, show. And the breath is back in there. So really short, easy hotkeys that will make editing times hopefully a lot faster for you as a podcaster. How about, and I'm going to get to your comments, by the way, so do fire in questions. If you've got any questions you want to ask me during this show, just type into the chat. I can see and I can feature your comment in a nice little speech bubble on the screen. No matter whether you're watching on YouTube Live, I know some of you like to watch over on Facebook Live. I can see your comments over there, you'll be pleased to know. And also I can pull in comments from Twitch and stuff like that. So wherever you're commenting, just ask a question, and about 15 minutes into the show, I will mention your comments, so about 8 minutes from now. So noise reduction is an interesting beast, and I wanted to try and make it as easy to understand noise reduction in this session for podcasters in particular. For those of you who may never have played with it, or may just not have any clue how to do it properly and what works and what doesn't work. Noise reduction, I would say, in the world of audio production, not just podcast production, but audio production, is one of the most, I would say, misunderstood and kind of misinformation kind of style of things that's out there. The number of YouTube videos I watch, right? And a lot of people go onto YouTube to learn. I go on YouTube to learn, but it doesn't mean all the information on there is correct. And sometimes I watch videos and I think, no. That's not how you should be reducing noise. So there are 3 common ways that I see people reducing noise in audio. And I'm going to give you a very interesting example here that we can follow through so you can see how it works. There are 3 main methods to reduce noise when you're doing a podcast. Let me just bring up a different version of the podcast here. And you'll see here, I recorded this version. I also compressed it a little bit to bring up the background noise. This bit here is background noise. Let's play it. That is the fan on my Mac going into overdrive. I was actually rendering something in After Effects just to get it to really whir up so you can hear this. And now in this section of noise reduction, I am going to attempt to eliminate completely the noise of that fan, even when I speak. Hey, it's Mike here. Using 3 different methods from best to worst. My opinion, right, every podcaster really should be using a downward expander to get rid of noise like this. You should be using a downward expander. Don't worry, by the end of this hour, you'll know exactly what it is and how it works. If you can't, for whatever reason, use a downward expander, if your audio editor doesn't have it, say you're not using Audition, maybe you're using Logic or something like that, then the second best thing you can do is use a noise gate. And I will very briefly skip over into Logic and show you a noise gate in action in a moment as well. And if you can't do one or two, or if the sound is too complex to remove using those methods, then and only then should you go into the effects menu and go to noise reduction process or sound remover. That's only my opinion. Hey, everyone has a different way of doing things, and there's no right or wrong necessarily. But I do believe if you're using noise reduction or sound remover as your go-to in your podcast post-production to remove sounds, you are degrading the quality of your podcast, possibly without even realizing it, whereas downward expanders and noise gates will not degrade the quality of your podcast. And as you can tell in my voice now, I'm really passionate about getting the right information out there about reducing and removing noise from a podcast. So let me try and show you what I mean. Here we have a noisy fan, and when the fan finishes or completes, hey, it's Mike here. You hear me talking to the Adobe After Effects podcast. And there's the fan again. The only issue with this particular, and at the end, to a crazy level. Okay, there's the fan. So to create an expander, we would do that really easily in Adobe Audition using, let's have a look here, Effects, Amplitude and Compression, Dynamics Processing. Here it is. And actually, you'll see I've already pretty much set up a downward expander. So this space here is where the downward expanding is happening. Anything really, as you can see here, below 40 decibels will get downward expanded, and it begins at sort of minus 25 dB. Now, I'll show you exactly why I've set it up like this. Let's just reset it to normal, default here. So I've said, let's take minus 25 as the start point for downward expansion, and then we're going down to 40 to give it a bit of leeway. I could make it really hard like that and sort of say anything below minus 25 gets downward expanded. Now, what is downward expansion? You're basically doing the inverse or the reverse of compression on any audio that falls below minus 25 dB. So anything below minus 25 dB will get squashed down almost so you can hardly hear it. So in my opinion, that's the best way of reducing noise, because you're not actually eliminating it or scrubbing it. You're kind of crushing it. So it's kind of the best, the most lossless way of reducing noise, in my opinion. You can use a noise gate, but that's more binary. That's more 1 or 0, on or off. Downward expansion is a little more holistic, and I'll show you how you would set this up properly. So if you've got no idea how to set up a downward expander, then what you would do is you would grab just a sample of the noise, the fan, here, and then in Adobe Audition, it's really easy to do this. You would go to Window, Amplitude Statistics, and you would scan. Usually this would be completely blank if you haven't run it already. I think I ran it already this morning. If you click Scan Selection here, it is going to tell you the peak amplitude of your noise. So it tells me here the noise, the fan in the background that's disturbing my podcast, is going no higher than minus 24.72 decibels. So let's round it up and call it minus 25 dB, okay? If I then select everything, go into the preview window, have a look at this downward expander, amplitude and compression, dynamics processing, and look, immediately the fan has gone because I've told it anything below minus 25.4 dB, I want you to downward expand. And this is even more apparent if we go Shift D and bring in the spectral. I mean, look at how clean that is. Can you see that? It has basically eliminated that whole fan noise completely. Look, black spots down there in the preview, and there's a lot of fan noise, and obviously you can see it in the waveform there when I make it bigger. Fan noise, no fan noise. Speech remains intact. So anything above minus 25 dB, the compressor or expander is not touching it, but anything below, this is a hard delete. Now, what we're going to notice, and the reason why I initially had it set over like this, is if you, ooh, crikey, that's weird. What happened there? Let's go back to default. That just went weird on me. Let's go back. So we set that up for minus 25, and that goes down like this. So something like that, yeah. What you're going to notice, because I've got it set up really hard, that's like really, really tough, that setting, you'll probably notice it kind of clips a bit of my speaking, so I lose a bit of speaking. Let's listen. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Can you hear that? It's kind of clipping because it goes every time my voice goes below minus 25 dB, it's really not doing good stuff to it. So that's why you give it leeway by moving the bottom point over to minus, say, 40. This should be a little more natural. No fan at all. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. And I can still hear a bit of so you can still hear the downward expander working. So I'm going to move it again over to maybe minus 45. Hey, it's Mike. And just at that point, I could start to hear the fan returning. So again, fine tune it over like that. No, bit more. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Now, the only issue with this particular podcast is we're rendering constantly. Okay, so you'll hear no fan noise. Switch the downward expander off and you get this. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Now, the only issue with this particular podcast is we're rendering constantly. Let's put the downward expander back on. We're recording the show, so you'll always hear the CPU or the GPU raging itself up to a crazy level. Really, really cool, isn't it? That's the best way. If you can set, and I could probably have set that a little bit better, but I wanted to give you a really quick example of how that would work. let's go back to spectral frequency again. And let's just run that over now. Dynamics processing. So there's my setting there. And look, yeah, you can still see a little bit of background noise is left because I haven't quite set it perfectly. But you can get really OCD with it. And using the preview window in Adobe Audition and just kind of tweaking, but definitely use amplitude statistics on your noise sample first and foremost. Let's just undo that so I can use it again. So you can figure out the peak amplitude of your noise. It's so important to know that because once you know that, you have a figure to work with in your downward expander. So we'll get back into noise gating and maybe noise reduction as well. And I will show you why noise reduction should be bottom of your list for sound removal in podcasting because it really does impact the overall quality. There's no change in quality to my voice or anything I've said there. I am not reducing quality. I'm not removing sounds or frequencies. I'm only cutting out or downward expanding audio. So we'll get into the other couple and I'll get into a few other bits in just a moment. But I do think right now it's time for one of these.
Monday to Friday live.
Nice to be here with a podcast editing hacks show today, featuring some of your conversation here in the session. Let's have a look at what you've been saying and feature you. Alexander, hello to you. Tune in with Trish, hello.
This is Mike Russell from musicradiocreative.com.
Gaming Unlimited wants to know, how do you make a podcast? Whoa, that is a whole other topic. That's a completely new topic. But if you want to get started, I would highly recommend you check out my friend Cliff Ravenscraft. Check out podcastanswerman.com. And that would, if you've never even looked into creating a podcast before, that is the place I would recommend you get into. And from there, you can discover the whole wide world and ecosystem of podcasting. But yeah, definitely go and check out my friend Cliff Ravenscraft at podcastanswerman.com if you're kind of at the very start of your journey. That's the kind of area I started with Cliff Ravenscraft. Also started off with Jason and Jeremy from Internet Business Mastery. Although they don't specifically do how to podcast courses, they're just a great introduction to the podcasting world. There's Pat Flynn and others. So yeah, go check them out and go create your own podcast because it's great fun. Riste is in. Nice to see you, Riste. Thank you for joining. And I did see actually that Riste created another jingle for me over in the Music Radio Creative community. Just reminded me, let's load it up here and have a look. Yeah, here we go. Let's have a listen to your jingle.
This is Mike Russell from musicradiocreative.com.
Oh, wow. Rizday, I've got to say that's absolutely amazing. And I can just see that this is amazing. Luis Riviera has made a donation via Super Chat to Music Radio Creative Live. Thank you so much. Lewis says, I was one of those noise reduction people, LOL. Never thought to use this method to reduce background noise. Thanks, Mike. Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. I enjoy showing these techniques off, and I'm very, very grateful for the donation via YouTube Super Chat today. What else shall we mention before we get back? And there's a lovely ka-ching for Lewis's beautiful donations. So thank you very much. David has reminded us, David Silk, Mr. Shortcuts as he's known in the community, change the speed setting in preferences playback for your JKL shuttle speed to half speed if you like. Oh, interesting. And a very good tip, so something to bear in mind. Do I recommend any special keyboards for Adobe CC? There are some. I think you can get peel-on panels. You can probably sort of stick them on from Amazon. But if I remember correctly, I've never used them, so I can't recommend them. But I have seen them. I believe a company called Editor's Keys make keyboards specifically for this purpose, for Windows and for Mac. And I think they have one for Adobe Audition. So you might want to Google up Editor's Keys and check them out. What bitrate should you encode these days? Andreas is asking. I was going to cover that during the session, so now is as good a time as ever to cover that, because this is more of a talky point on podcasting rather than something I'd practically show you. So my encouragement to you, if you're producing a podcast, is to do everything before you mix down to the final file in a lossless audio file format. And what that means is using something that does not degrade in quality every time you save it. So the most common of those would be the WAV file, .wav, or WAVE, as some people call it. If you're on an Apple, if you're using something like GarageBand or Logic Pro, you might be working in AIFF, AIF, as I think it's known, or of course .FLAC, FLAC. Is a lossless file format. So all your podcast intros, your jingles, your host track, your guest tracks should all be recorded losslessly. And the reason is if you make edits and you save and you save and you save, you will keep losing quality over time. So always mix losslessly. And then when you get to the final product, then you can save it as an MP3 just before you upload to your media host, and obviously syndicate it out through iTunes, Google Play and everything. But yeah, MP3, and the most common format for a stereo podcast with a bit of music or some jingles in would be 128 kilobits per second, stereo, 16-bit. No need to worry about 32-bit when it's podcast. I know some of the media hosts get funny if you upload 32-bit files, so try to look towards 16-bit. But I hope that helps you, Andreas, and anyone else watching, thinking about podcasting. Paige is asking, do you think voiceover artists should use these techniques before sending their final audio, or do you as a producer find it best to work with the raw audio? Brilliant question. Excellent question about voiceovers. So I would say, Paige, with voiceover, it's definitely a little bit different because most voiceovers are recording in a beautifully sound-treated room with no huge whizzing fans or anything like that. So usually the noise floor is pretty low. So that means there should be no need for noise reduction or downward expansion or noise gating. And actually, I would say if that happens, and as an audio producer, straight away, I can see if I get an audio file from a voice artist, I can pretty much tell 99% of the time if a voice artist has applied noise reduction or gating or anything like that. And I would say that actually works against you because it indicates that you have a badly sound-treated room and you're trying to eliminate things that just shouldn't be there. For a podcaster, I think it's acceptable to have background noise because you don't always have the privilege of a purpose-built booth, especially when you're starting out. Most podcasters record on the fly, or maybe they even do it on location with a noisy background. So that's where these techniques will come in handy. For noise reduction, definitely not. For compression and EQ, possibly, but not too much would be my answer on that one. Oh, I see Isabella's in as well with a spanner. Hi, Isabella is in on the chat as well. So if you want to ask any music, radio, creative related questions, Isabella is there for you. Or Bass is asking, or Bass is asking, how am I? I'm doing very well indeed. I can see also Ule and Joe is in as well. Nice to see you, Joe. And Ule, who else have we got here? Is there something that should be used instead of regular noise reduction methods? It seems to work better. Referring to downward expansion, I would say yes. Unless it's a terrible noise, then definitely go for it. How do you pull up the preview editor? Davis, let me show you exactly how you do that. The preview editor, really, really easy to access. All you need to do to get there is click this icon up here, top right, and boom, you got a preview editor, which will show you what the edits you're making are doing in real time. So it's very, very handy indeed. Just a question or two more, and then I'll get straight back to it. Joe's wondering, any chance you could show us how to do this in OBS? There is a noise reduction in OBS Studio for live streaming, and it's definitely something I will have to cover maybe in a future stream that I will do about OBS, because I know a lot of people have asked about that. Thank you, Julian, for the encouragement there. Pleased to help. Gosh, lots of questions coming in today. I'll get to a couple more and then I will get back. In fact, no, what I'm going to do, because I can see there are so many questions coming in today, which is good. Clearly, this is a topic that a lot of you would like to know more about, so that I can get through some more of the content I've got for you today. I will hop back to it, but any questions you're popping in there, I'll do my best to get to in the next section. So, a noise gate. Let me show you how that works. It's pretty simple. I would show you in Adobe Audition, but there's not currently a noise gate in Audition CC 2017. But apparently when 2018 comes out, which we hear it's pretty close, so close the internet wires can almost feel it, I think. Adobe Max is going on in Las Vegas right now, and it's the first full day of the conference tomorrow. So fingers crossed, everyone, for a 18th of October release of Adobe Audition CC 2018. And they're putting in a legacy compressor from Adobe Premiere Pro natively and completely remixed and redesigned for Adobe Audition. It's going to have a noise gate in it. And that's going to be brilliant. I can't wait. Let me show you a noise gate and what it can do. So here in Logic, I've got a before and after view. And as you can see, before, there's the noise. After, the noise gate has got rid of it. Noise gate, as I say, is binary compared to downward expander. So it's either 1 or 0. It's either on or off. And that can sort of cause choppiness and bits like that. But we know that the peak of the noise was minus 25. And I had to play with this earlier on. Let's just mute this second one out. And I found the sweet spot here was to have let's zoom in on this, a threshold of minus 23. So anything above minus 23 dB is getting through that gate and the gate will be open. But anything below minus 23 dB will close the gate and mean that there's absolutely zero audio getting through. Now I can change the reduction to allow some audio to get through, but the traditional way to set up a noise gate is to have it eliminate all noise. And you've also got attack, hold and release settings here as well. Work very similar to compression. So let me show you how it works on this piece of audio right now, and you'll see the gate opening and closing. It should start off closed to get rid of the noise, and then it should open when I start speaking. Watch this. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Now, the only issue with this particular podcast is we're rendering constantly whenever we're recording the show. So there you go, you can see it flipping on and off, and also it's kind of jittering where my voice is getting a little bit too quiet and not all my voice is getting through the gate. So I can either mitigate that by reducing the threshold a bit more, but then when I play back, you'll probably hear some of the fan now. So you'll always hear the... So back up to maybe minus 24, CPU or the GPU raging itself up. What I could do is bring that up, but just take the reduction up a little bit so we're not getting rid of everything. Let's have a listen. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Now, the only issue with this particular podcast, you could also make the attack a little less aggressive. So moving that up should make it less jittery. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Also the same with the release, increasing that will help. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. And as you can see, fine-tuning the attack and release is definitely going to help there. So downward expander, best thing. Otherwise, noise gate, and if not noise gate, you want to look at noise reduction. Let me show you how it works on this sample here and why it's not the best choice as your first choice. Noise reduction. So what I'll do, I'll switch off spectral and I'll just go here. So what we traditionally do with noise reduction is we find a little clip of the noise only. There it is. Oh, thank you so much, David Steele. Amazing. David Steele donated $10 via mrc.fm/donate. Very, very grateful for that indeed. And let me just have a look, because I believe that David Steele also has written a message with the donation. Amazing of you to donate. It really does help me to keep these streams up and running and to do them on a daily basis for you between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. UK time, Monday to Friday. And let's have a little look over here at Streamlabs to view that donation there. So what have we got here? Noise reduction sucks. Great hack today. Thank you, David. Really appreciate that. So, yes, what we do is effects, noise reduction, capture the noise print, and then I'm going to bring up spectral frequency so you can see what's happening in real time. Look at the top and look at the bottom. Top is the original. Bottom is what noise reduction is doing. And we'll go to, where do we go? Noise reduction. Had a brain freeze. Noise reduction process. And then what we're going to do is really crank this up. 100% noise reduction. Let's do it. Whoa, yeah. And I'm going to reduce it aggressively by 30 dB. And look at how, yeah, okay, you're starting to lose that fan noise. See, the fan noise is pretty much gone. If I switch noise reduction off, it's back, on, and it's off. Let's take that up even a little bit further. But you can see now the frequencies there and there are really being destroyed. Let me just play this back, and you'll see what I mean. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Now, the only issue with this particular podcast Can you hear how there's a degradation in quality there on my voice? Yes, we've lost the fan, but we've also lost a lot of quality on the host there in the podcast. And to make this even more prominent and scary for you, I'm going to actually do half of this with aggressive noise reduction, which we'd need to set it about there to completely eliminate the fan. And then the second half, this bit over here, I'm going to run my downward expander. And I just want to show you, there's my downward expander, right? And then let's switch off the preview. And look, it's the difference between night and day. This is the audio in spectral, and you won't see it really in the waveform. You'll see it more in spectral view, with great chunks of black, so great frequencies taken out completely. Whereas with the downward expander, the noise has pretty much gone, but there are no big chunks of my voice missing. And that's why you'll hear the reduction in quality, and that's why only use noise reduction if you absolutely have to. I hope that that makes things clear. Wow. All right, we'll get on to some other bits in just a moment. I did want to get on to compression and loudness, if I can, as well in the next session, because I think compression is something that podcasters should use, but lightly. And loudness, I think every podcaster should know about it and what it does and all the rest of it. So that we can have our podcasts all sounding very similar to each other and not deafening the listener as well. Nella, who's also known as Barbara, says, when you have multiple audio tracks, when you set the dynamics processing on one track, should it affect the other tracks? Well, you can set it up either way. So you can set it up so it just affects the one track, or you can set up what's known as a bus. And I've demonstrated this before on my channel, where you say, okay, I want to send the host and these two guests through a bus, and that's going to be having its own dynamics processing on it. But if you are working with a guest, say on Skype, and your own thing, you probably don't want to do that. You probably want to set up dynamics or single band compression separately, so you can kind of get both tracks sounding the same, which is kind of a task. But it's good when you finally get it right, which is nice. What else have we got here? Let's have a look in the chat. I can see, some reason I can't highlight this question, but David Luce is saying, what if you don't have a large enough selection of background noise? Say it was just a mouse click. If it's just a mouse click, you can probably leave that in, to be honest with you. Otherwise, yeah, you could try and cut it out manually, or you could use the spectral frequency display. And I've often demonstrated the fact that you can hop in and use this little tool here, which is, let's just hover over it so you can see the spot healing brush tool. And if it's a little click, you can just get the tool the right size, find the click in spectral, like here's a little click, a bassy click, highlight that, and it will kind of just scrub out that noise for you. That's pretty much got rid of the noise at the end. So that is a great way to do it. What else have we got? Let's see if we can get some more questions featured right here, right now. We got Strap Maniac saying, I'm a voiceover and would prefer the producer made the choice for me, referring to Paige's question earlier, instead of, needing to add processing and compression yourself. As a voice artist, you shouldn't really need to do that. That is definitely the producer's job. How do you send tips in chat? David Steele is wondering. Just send them over. One of the moderators will highlight your question or your tip, and I will do my best to get to it as well. What else have we got? Now I can see that for some reason I can't put Strap Maniac's comments on the screen, or David Lewis's. I'm not sure why that is. But thank you for your questions. Samantha Land is wondering over on Facebook, where do you post questions? Well, right there, where you're watching on Facebook, you can post a question, and I will do my best to get to it. What else have we got here? Dan McDermott, again, for some reason I'm having an issue highlighting your question in the lower third area, but is wondering, I record in Audacity and edit in Adobe Audition because Audacity doesn't rev up my CPU. Really? I don't have much experience of Adobe Audition revving up my CPU. Not really done much with Audition that would do that. Mainly when I work in Premiere Pro and After Effects, I get my my CPU revved up. David says, a noise gate needs some WD-40. Yes, so it opens and closes without a squeak, right? Absolutely. What else have we got? Davis, I've got to say the graphical controls for dynamics processing in Audition seems much more intuitive than a panel of knobs. Yeah, absolutely. I can see Juan's in. Nice to see you, Juan. Welcome along. I hope everything is well with you right now in Mexico. What else have we got? Is it possible to apply track level effects in the multi-track of Adobe Audition? Not really apply. You do that on the mix down when you mix down, but you can bounce down tracks. That's a way to do it. Daniel's wondering, Isotope RX6, any good? Not used it, but I am a fan of stuff that Isotope put out there. So definitely have a look into it, but I've not had real experience with that. And finally, for this section, before I get back into some more podcast editing hacks, Justin Jones is saying, I have a guest that had a fan focused right at his mic. Is there a way to fix this without noise reduction? Oh dear. What, you mean he was literally pointing a fan into the microphone? That's just off. Well, the best tip with that kind of stuff is get it right at source. So if that's the case, I'd say to that guest, mate, you need to move that fan out the room, or at least point it away from your microphone, turn the microphone around. That's the best thing. Because remember, using all of those techniques, downward expansion, noise gate, and noise reduction, we are trying to plaster or patch over the hole. We're trying our best to tidy up after the mess has happened. If you can get things like elementary things like that right in the first place, that really helps. But if absolutely you can't, and you've got this killer audio and you can't record again, then definitely, yeah, I would start with... I would give it a go with Downward Expander first, because as you've seen, let's just go back now and have a quick look. If I zoom right in, again, over here, hang on, and switch this off, and this like this, you will see that if I undo and put the fan back into this audio, let's do that. You see here, see that fan is really quite loud. I mean, it's not louder than the speech. And in all honesty, if you got like a guest and the fan is louder than what they're saying, you've got a problem. And you need to get that guest to source out their audio, because that just won't do. But always it should be the case. You can see that's a loud fan. Hits minus 25 dB, but I had no problem eliminating it with those techniques. Now, I do want to move on, and I'm going to go to a file that hasn't been compressed. I'll show you this. So you can see there's hardly any fan noise. Even though this was the podcast, there's a bit of fan there waiting to rear its ugly head. Let's normalize this to show you what I mean. That's a fan and a half. Sounds like I'm out in the Arctic, doesn't it? Compression's an important thing, but you've got to get it right, particularly on a podcast, because the temptation is to say, oh, wow, my audio editor, my shiny monthly subscription to Adobe Audition gives me a multiband compressor, so I'm going to use a multiband compressor, even though I'm not really sure how to set it up. It looks really cool, and look, it makes my voice really loud and really bassy and really broadcast-like, and look, oh, it's got these settings like broadcast, yes, and look at this, Pop Master, wow. Yeah, I'm just going to whack a load of that on, and you're going to give your listener a headache, particularly if they're using earbuds, because if you don't know what you're doing and you kind of just move these frequencies around and say, hey, I'm going to add this compression here to this frequency here and this frequency here, I'm going to make that really, really harsh there and really harsh there, and play this back. Listen, this will probably give you a headache. Hey, it's Mike here, and whoa, that gives me a headache. Hang on. Let's make it so it's actually having an effect. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Now, the only issue with this particular podcast is we're rendering constantly whenever we're recording the show. So you can see, if you don't know how to set up a multiband compressor, you can have the opposite effect. And brick wall limiting, oh my goodness. So I'm going to make it really simple for you. For podcasting, there is one effect I recommend. Don't try and go nuts with multiband compression unless you know what you're doing. Don't worry about dynamics processing. So many people use dynamics processing for compression. But there's an even simpler effect to use than that, and it's in amplitude and compression, single band compressor. Now, this is literally the simplest compression to use in the world because it has everything a compressor should have on it and nothing a compressor shouldn't have on it. So it makes it really simple for those learning compression. Now you'll see the above wave file here. This is the original file, and the below one here, this is the compressed file. And I already had a play at setting this up. So we've got threshold, ratio, attack and release, and possibly output gain that you want to play with. I'm going to put this all to default, so that will change the shape of that waveform to match the top one. Then I'm going to close this and tell you how you can find out, first of all, how to set up threshold. And then I'll tell you about ratio, and then finally attack and release, and how output gain works. So threshold is the point at which compression will start to work. Okay? So if I say I want compression to work on anything louder than 1 dB, you won't get much compression at all. You'll hardly get any compression because not much audio goes above minus 1 dB. If I say minus 20 dB, you're going to start to see some compression working now. Maybe not much, but a little bit. If I go to minus 40, you'll see a lot of compression here suddenly. And the reason it's not working is because I didn't have the ratio turned up. I'll explain ratio in a moment. Now you can see it's kicking in like a beast. A bit too much there. But don't worry, we'll get to what that does. But how do you really know how to set the threshold on a compressor? How can you really figure that out? It's like, it's all very well just moving this dial around and saying, oh, that looks good. Yeah, I'll have that. Or, oh, let's move it down there. Oh, that looks good. No, that looks terrible. How can you really figure out where your threshold should be? Because every recording is different. Every recording is created at a different volume. It's got different EQ. It's got different spikes. Like, look at this huge spike here. That will definitely affect things, especially with your attack and release times. So how can you sort of get a ballpark figure for your particular piece of audio? Not a kind of one-size-fits-all, set your threshold at minus 20 dB and forget about it. Well, a good way to do it, again, is going back into amplitude statistics over here in the top left. And I did demonstrate this earlier. You can pull it up by going to the window menu and hitting amplitude statistics. Then you want to scan all of your audio here, and it gives you a clever little figure here, which is called average RMS amplitude, okay? Average RMS amplitude, and it tells me the average amplitude of my audio, my entire podcast, is minus 36.29. Let's call it minus 36 dB. Aha, so that gives me a clue that if I set my compressor at minus 36 or around there, maybe up or down a bit depending on how it sounds to my ear, if I set it at minus 36, I'm going to be hitting the average amplitude of my recorded speech. Therefore, my compressor will work. And if I set it there as well, gets me to my second point, ratio, I won't have to set that too aggressively because I've already found a sweet spot for setting my compressor. So let's take that figure of minus 36 and see how it affects things. Effects, amplitude and compression, single band compressor. And I'm going to set the ratio to 1 so the compressor doesn't work. And then I'm going to 1-to-1, so there's no compression. Then I'm going to go minus 36, let's be OCD, minus 36.29, the average, or minus 36.3. Now, ratio is the next thing to focus on. That is how much audio will be compressed, crushed by, when it hits over minus 36 dB. So, now, forgive me, because I'm not the best at maths, but let's keep the figures simple. Say you set the threshold at minus 20 dB. And some audio went louder than minus 20 dB by 10 dB. So that audio is hitting a constant, let's call it a constant of minus 10 dB. If you set the ratio 2-to-1, it is going to compress the audio that goes above the threshold by 2-to-1. So essentially that 10 dB that went above minus 20, that 10 dB will be compressed 2-to-1, meaning you will lose half the audio. So 5 dB will be the compression limit, if you see. It would be much easier to draw a diagram right now. I'm using fingers. Again, if I do it 4-to-1, that's going to be 4 times compression on that 10 dB, meaning it will go down to 2.5 dB over minus 20 dB. I hope I've got that right. Maths has never been my strong point, but you get the idea. The more you crank up the ratio, the harder the compressor is going to work. And I should actually have started by saying, well, why in the first place would you want to compress your podcast audio? And the reason is people are listening to podcasts, as we well know, in all kinds of different environments. So, they're listening. The biggest killer is in the car with the rumble of that engine. Unless you're driving a hybrid, it's like, and then you're trying to listen to speech over the sound of that engine. And if you've got your window wound down and you're on the highway, you've also got the of other cars. And if there's no compression, when someone starts talking really quietly like this, you're just not going to hear that in a car. And then when someone speaks really loud, the waveform will go really loud. So compression kind of pushes down the loud bits, increases the quiet bits, and means that in a noisy environment, like for instance, podcasts in the car, your podcast will be intelligible all the way through. And I recommend single band compression for podcasters because it's really easy to set up. You can't really make a mistake with it because you've not got multi-bands that you're compressing, and it's good enough for compression. So yeah, like if we push the ratio up, I think 2:1 is going to be enough here. You should see a change, but like, whoa, look at that. Now, I think 2:1 is enough. Look, that compression's already really good, but we've got a nasty blip here. Can you see? I wonder if it'll still show if I do this. Yeah. This here is a spike. They call it a spike in your audio. And it's just, that is hitting like minus 0.1 dB. And it's kind of a real blip on the landscape because everything else is nicely compressed. Apart from that pain. So how do you, what if I've set a compressor mic and I've got my sweet threshold and I've got my sweet ratio, but then I've got that silly spike there. And it's the only thing that's ruining my super sweet 100% pure podcaster's compression. Well, that's your attack and release times, which is the kind of third thing in the mix of setting up a compressor. And all you have to do to eliminate that really is decrease your attack time. So attack time, that's literally the time you tell your compressor to go in and attack the audio. So if I reduce that to 0 milliseconds, it is going to immediately attack as soon as it sees that spike. See, it tried to attack, but I gave it 10 milliseconds of space and it just didn't quite get there. Didn't hit the mark. Let's take it down to 5 milliseconds and see whether it reduces the spike. What, 4 then? Okay, 4. Yeah, see the spike's going down. Let's go to 3 milliseconds. Oh, the spike's disappearing. 2 milliseconds. Go on, enter. Oh, it's nearly there. 1 millisecond. Yes, it's still a little spiky. 0. Done. Eliminated. Spike destroyed. Fast attack, and the spikes are gone. Release is not so much of a pressure. 100 milliseconds is quite normal. If you want to be a little more punchy, you can go to 50 milliseconds. But really, I'd only set a fast release time, which is the amount of time before the compressor returns back to normal, if I was doing radio imaging. For podcasting, you probably want a more natural sound, so 100 milliseconds is okay. And then output gain, yeah, this is a lovely compression, but now we can hardly hear things because it's peaking at below minus 18 dB. And what I can actually do, well, I can do one of two things. I can either say, okay, so increase me that audio by 10 dB, and it will increase it up like that, see? And you can go further. You can go up a little bit more. Isn't that a beautiful compression, though? Compare that top one with that bottom one, and you'll see how the low bits have been expanded to be louder, and the loud bits have been crushed to be quieter. Having a problem talking today, but hopefully you're enjoying this and getting some value. So yeah, that's what you can do with a compressor. But if you want to keep the output gain at 0 dB, you're welcome to do that. And then when you can apply the compression and get your final waveform back, this is your finished podcast, for instance, but it's far too quiet. Easiest thing to do is go to favorites, normalize to 0.1 dB. This won't compress or affect the audio at all. It will just increase the amplitude so that the biggest peak, which is that spike, it's still there, but less prominent, to minus 1 dB. You can also hard limit, but I recommend you do this with caution because it will affect the sound of your audio and the quality as well. Where's hard limiting here? I hardly use hard limiting. I don't really believe in hard limiting, unless of course you're creating music to upload to Spotify or whatever, then it might be handy. Minus 3 dB, not going to have an effect until I create that input boost really, really high. When I crank up the input boost, like that, hang on, preview window, that would help. Oh yeah, see, hard limiting will not let any audio get above minus 3 dB. And the louder you make the input boost, the more it's going to hard limit. You see there, right at the 50 dB mark, it's even hard limiting the fan, which is not good. That is a hard limited fan at minus 3 dB. Let's just push that up a little bit. You'll still hear a bit of the fan because there's no noise reduction on this, but you'll also hear nice compression. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Okay, that's with compression. Now I'm going to undo everything and play you the raw file again. Hey, it's Mike here, and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Hopefully you will notice a difference there between compressed and uncompressed. Going to redo it. Wrong key. Hang on. Edit. Where are we? Redo. Oh, yes, I should know that. Command, Shift, and Z to redo. There. Okay, cool. So we got this all looking good. We'll move on to loudness in just a moment. That'll probably be the final thing I cover in this podcast editing hacks session. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I am ready to improve my audio skills.
Well, that's good to hear. And I didn't mention it at the start of the show, but if you want to call in and you're watching this live right now, there is a phone-in number. Call this number to speak to me live now.
415-800-1055.
I'd love to speak to you at +1 if you're outside the United States, by the way.
MusicRadioCreative.com.
That's right, and it'd be great to have a banter with someone in the last 10 minutes. If not, I've got more that I can show you, but I always love it when someone watching the show live calls in, because it makes me feel like there's someone out there, which is always a good thing. Let's have a look. Loads of cool comments coming in. I really appreciate you, by the way, if you're commenting, and I also apologize if I don't get round to mentioning all the comments, because like I say, they do come in very, very fast and furious, and I can't always get to every comment. But if you've put a comment in there, or even if you've started a discussion, something you'd really like to know about, take the discussion offline and post it into our community at community.musicradiocreative.com. That's community.musicradiocreative.com. Here it is, full of people who are just as excited about audio as you are and I am. And we tend to sort of take our discussions offline there. I should also mention it is the last day and a half to enter at mrc.fm/win. We've already had 1,547 entries, but you still stand a good chance if you enter to win a 3-month subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud All Apps plan. Whether you already have a subscription to Adobe Creative Cloud or you're considering hopping in for the first time, this would be a great opportunity and a great prize to get in and use it for 3 months. So go to mrc.fm/win right now. Start creating awesome audio with a fantastic Adobe Audition CC. I believe Adobe Audition CC 2018 is due to drop very, very soon indeed, and I can't wait. Also, new versions of Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and more all due out very soon. And the big Adobe Max conference going on in Las Vegas right now. So, go and win yourself a subscription. If you haven't already got it and you're enjoying my videos, highly recommend you get over there and get your name into the draw. I will be making the draw live on the show this coming Thursday, the 19th of October. Not only is that my birthday, but it's also the last live stream of October. Oh, I wish I had a sad jingle. Hang on.
Music Radio Creative Dum Dum Dum.
But don't worry, we're back on the 1st of November. So 19th of October will be my last show of the month. I'll also make the Adobe Creative Cloud draw and then a short break because obviously it's half term and we've got Halloween and all kinds of fun things going on over here. But I'll be back fresh and ready on the 1st of November. Right, let's get back in and do the final thing. And I wanted to talk a little bit to you about loudness. Now, I know many of you watching will know about loudness, but it's worth to mention it. First of all, what it is, for those of you watching right now that don't know what it is. Loudness is, well, to give you an example, have you ever watched the TV and you're watching this really quiet movie or this beautiful classical concert, and then suddenly, just in the middle, it just stops for a moment, and then you get, all beds on sale, 25% off, buy now! And it's really loud in your living room, and you're like, what on earth is that? That's because the loudness of the concert you were just watching is much lower than the loudness of the TV commercials, and it's really, really annoying. And, got a phone call. Hello, Music Radio Creative. You're on. Who's this?
Hey, this is Davis.
Davis.
I've been watching your little YouTube channel for a while. I love it.
Cheers.
I got started with a production job about a year back, and you got me going with that, so it was great.
Well, amazing. Well, I'm pleased. Thank you so much, Davis. So tell me a little bit more about your production job. What are you up to?
So I'm actually in America right now, and just getting going for the morning. Got myself some coffee while watching your show. Never watched a live stream, from you before.
Nice.
But it's pretty cool. We do some of that at work. I'm trying to get my head wrapped around what software we need to stream live and get all that stuff
awesome.
Going. So
that's a great journey. So you planning to do some live streams?
Cool.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Are you planning on doing some live streams, Davis, then?
Yeah, we've done some in the past, but honestly, they are very cringy, just such bad quality and, I don't know, poor preparation. So we have an issue where it's very, very busy, and I feel like I'm doing several jobs, that's how it goes sometimes. But a little focus on that and trying to bring it all into sorry, I've got the other thing going. I keep hearing it. It's very distracting.
Delayed.
Trying to get all of that under wraps and just, I don't know, lock down. That's what we're trying to do.
That sounds really, really cool. So who are you producing for then? Can you say?
Sure. It's a place called Linux Academy. We do like cloud training, IT infrastructure training, stuff like that for AWS and Amazon or Azure and all these different types of things. And we've got some video side, just like, random YouTube videos and stuff like that. We've tried to add a face to it because there's a lot of just, you see the screen, you hear them talking, but there's no kind of personality behind it. So we're trying to just kind of do instructor branding and all that kind of stuff, really ramp up our video production, and to do various random little podcasts that they throw at me. So I definitely have some audio stuff in there, but it's something fun. A hobby became my job, so that's a blast.
I love it.
I appreciate your tips. You're doing great.
Well, thank you, Davis. Really appreciate that. And yeah, I've just got your website on the screen now, linuxacademy.com. It looks fantastic. Looks really, really good.
We've got one, cloudassessments.com is our new one. It's pretty cool. We've got, I don't know if you can get to the podcast from there, but honestly, it's nothing amazing unless you're interested in the content, the quality of it so far. They've all recorded from Skype calls, so I'm kind of just clipping these together, trying to get a studio set up here soon. But
the main thing is getting the content out there, and then you can always improve over time. But that's fantastic. You're up to some really good stuff, Davis. So really appreciate you calling in.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
All the best. See ya. Bye-bye. So that's Davis, and he's just mentioned those sites, cloudassessments.com and linuxacademy.com. Look really, really fantastic. Thank you, Davis, for taking the time to call in and to tell me and also others watching right now what you're up to. That's fantastic. We are getting to the end of the show, so to expand a little bit on Loudness, there's so much we can do, but a really simple way of making sure your podcast conforms to the right loudness standard, which for podcasters is minus 16 LUFS. Minus 16 LUFS, that's all you need to know. Don't worry about the technicalities. Drag the podcast into the match loudness window. If you haven't got that, window, match loudness here, and then make sure your target loudness is set here at minus 16 LUFS. Don't need to worry too much about tolerance and max true peak level. As long as they're set within those reasonable ranges, they'll be okay. There's also a bit of hard limiting, I believe, involved somewhere. True peak limiting, which can also be quite sweet for your podcast. And if you run that now, you'll see that it just does a little bit. It doesn't compress your audio. It does a little bit of true peak limiting, as you can see, but it doesn't really interfere with everything else you've done previously. It just makes sure you're now at minus 16 LUFS. And to confirm that, and I wish I could show you more related to loudness, maybe we'll do that in another live stream. There is a great tool inside Effects Special, the Loudness Radar Meter. And I think earlier on I set this up to, minus 16 LUFS. Do make sure it's LUFS. There are 2 units, well, more than 2 units. It's usually on LKFS, but LUFS is what we usually go for to monitor our podcasting efforts. Back to the radar. Play this audio and you'll see the radar will start spinning around and it'll show over here what sort of LUFS setting you're hitting. So let's check this is right. Here we go. Hey, it's Mike here and welcome to the Adobe After Effects podcast. Now, and you can see there, generally it's hitting around minus 16, minus 15.9, but it's pretty much in the right region. So you'll always hear the CPU or the GPU raging itself up to a crazy level. You could play a whole podcast this way and get a radar filled all the way around like that, just to check that you're hitting the right loudness levels. So that means it's going to create a great experience for all podcast listeners, because when they go from one podcast to the next, they will not have to turn their headphones or their volume up and down. I know some apps already do automatic limiting and volume control for you, and that's great. But I think as podcasters, we should be making the effort in the first instance to get our podcast at the right level so that the apps and the end users don't have to do the work and we're doing the work for them. And on that thought, I shall love you and leave you. Hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, go and tell someone else about it. That's all I'd ask. Just go and tell someone else. And I will see you tomorrow for Wednesday's show from 2 p.m. UK time.